If you've seen my videos before, then there's one thing you should know that I repeat over and over. It's that when you first start off at something, you're going to be bad at it. And it's only over time, through trying again and again, can you ever get better. So this week I thought it would make sense to make a video about the worst mistakes I ever made as a player, and hopefully it can help you either prevent these mistakes from happening or help you realize that you're also making these same mistakes. And just before we begin, feel free to subscribe to the channel. It's totally free, and if you decide you don't want to watch anymore, you can always unsubscribe later. Now, on with the video. Now, when I play D&D, I can get really engrossed into a session, and it can lead to a lot of fun stuff happening. However, there's the common issue that my character doesn't necessarily have a notebook out taking notes about everything they're seeing. That means when the next session comes around, there's plenty of stuff that my character would be able to remember, because for them it happened mere hours ago, but for me, it could have been multiple weeks, and I have no idea. This is an issue I've always had. I've always been miserable at taking notes, to the point where I made a character whose whole premise was that they were writing down everything they were experiencing, and I still couldn't manage it. Now, does this have anything to do with the fact that my doctor recently recommended I get a test for ADHD? The point is that not taking notes has left me in a lot of difficult situations where we start a session and we're in the middle of exploring a dungeon or looking for a magic item, and I do not remember whatsoever what the motivation is for us doing this. And I basically get left out of the loop for the adventure because the rest of the party will go, oh, okay, well, we met this person and they told us we need to find this to go get that. And not only do I not remember that this is what we were supposed to do, I don't even remember who that person was or when we met them. It also doesn't help that a lot of my games run less than monthly, so a lot of the stuff that happened hasn't been on my mind for weeks or potentially months. That's really a minor issue, and that can quite easily be worked around in the game, either by reading over someone else's notes or having the DM just explain to you what happened. It might slow the game down a little bit, but it's not game ruining. It doesn't really hurt the fun that much. So now I want to talk about a more major issue that I've had. For the longest time, I have tremendously struggled with making characters that might be right for the adventure, but are wrong for the party. What I mean by this is that I might make a character that fits into the world of the adventure that we're being told, and their backstory is connected to stuff that's going on that motivates them to go on this adventure. However, they might be incompatible personality-wise with other party members. Part of this can sometimes be due to the fact that before session 0, even if we're going to do character creation in session 0, I go into it with a character that I already have in mind, which I know I shouldn't do. However, it's really difficult not to do that when I already have multiple characters that I'm thinking that I want to play in my head. And so when I get the opportunity to play a new character, I already have pretty strong ideas of what I have in mind, even if I want to avoid those. And the consequences can sometimes be that I need to sunset a character because after a session or two, I realize that the character that I have made will not fit with the characters that the rest of the party have made. For example, I recently joined a Fallout RPG, and in that, I made a raider character because it felt like that made sense. You know, it's Fallout, there's raiders and bandits and whatnot, so I wanted to be a raider. And to be fair to me, I didn't really know what the other characters were like or how the game worked. But when I joined it, and I quickly realized, oh, I'm playing with a lot of people who are like tied to lawful factions, and will not really want to hang out with someone who is breaking the law. I realized that, oh, this character isn't going to work. I need to bring a new character on and try something different. To which, if I don't want to abandon the character, but I know they're incompatible, I have to totally change their personality to something that is compatible, which usually ends up just turning out into them playing more like who I am, and that makes it feel weird and sad because it feels like this person who had a lot of personality now has zero personality. Here's an example of that happening. The second D&D character I ever made was a high elf wizard, and the joke of this character was that 100 years ago they got trapped in a wizard's tower and they had nothing else to do but read books every single day. And here's the thing, I don't think that's a bad idea for a character. I think that's a little bit funny. I can see how you can make that work as a character who is very, very academically smart, but very, very naive in terms of things that go on in the world, or very socially inept because they haven't talked or seen anybody in the last 100 years. There is something interesting there for someone who has made more than one D&D character before. However, for me, my whole experience with high elves was from Skyrim. And in Skyrim, they are not the nicest. And I thought, oh, well, it makes sense. If he's been trapped in a tower for 100 years, it's probably he's very ignorant about the world. He's probably potentially insensitive. And that ended up being a terrible idea. So my character, when he came across the halfling NPCs, he would make fun of them because of their height and declare himself superior for being taller. And I thought it was funny. I thought it was a part of a joke. I thought people initially were in on the joke, that this guy does kind of suck. However, I kind of quickly realized that they didn't see it that way. Over time, I got the feeling that when my character said something that was like being a jerk, that they couldn't really tell if this was the wizard being a jerk or if this was Nick being a jerk. And here's the most embarrassing, I don't even know if embarrassing is the right word. It feels like shameful is more appropriate. When I was playing this high elf, there's another guy in the party who was playing a half elf. And so since my character was intolerant, he would refer to himself as a full elf and then insult the other half elf for not being a full elf. And I didn't realize this until like a couple days ago when I went to go write this, that the guy I was saying this to was in real life mixed race, which you could see the implication there and how the fact that it took me so long to ever notice that I did that is shameful. But even with somehow not noticing that, I did see that the character I was playing was not facilitating other people having fun, that it was taking fun away from other people. So I very quickly stopped playing that part of the character, but however, their lack of knowledge on the world was their character, so it kind of ended up just being that I was playing myself, and I can see that also being even more confusing to the players on what's me and what's my character when I start switching them up interchangeably. And it literally took real life months through the great thanks of my DM, to help give my character a character arc that made them care a lot more about their friends, care about a lot more about society. And that was a great moment when you had this character who was very ignorant, who learned how to care for other people and learned how to have empathy for other people and to put other people's values above himself. And even at the very end of the campaign, he made a sacrifice play to save everyone else in the party and everyone else in the city. And that was a really powerful moment, taking this character to doing that. However, it shouldn't have come at the cost that it did. The moral of this story is to try to focus and be more aware of other people in your party. The game is for everyone, and everyone deserves to have fun. Try to communicate to them and not just figure out, is this character good for the adventure, but is this character good for the rest of the party? And most importantly, don't play jerk characters. You can play evil characters with underlining schemes. However, don't play characters who are going to directly insult other party members, because a lot of people put themselves into their characters, and you don't know if the character thing you're insulting is actually something deeply personal to the player that's playing them, and that can cause many years later for you to have a realization that you said something terrible to someone who you deeply respect. Moving on from that, I want to talk about cheating. The thing about cheating in D&D is that if you've played for a long enough time, there's a pretty good chance that you've done it at least once, where you've been in a situation where you know you need to roll at least a 15, you roll your die, you see the 6, and before you can really think about what you're doing, you say 16, and then you don't correct yourself. So yes, I have cheated in the past, and I feel guilty about it. I felt guilty when I did it, and I want to first explain all the different ways that I've cheated in D&D in the years, and then explain why I did it and why I no longer do it, and know for certain that I'm never going to do it again. So I have lied about the numbers that I rolled. I've re-rolled when no one noticed that I rolled the first time. I had a DM ask, "Is this how this spell works?" Describe it incorrectly, but better than the actual spell is, and then I went, "Yes it is," knowing that's not how it works. I have cast spells that I didn't have prepared, and I've removed the less damage from my health than I actually took. The reason I did all these things is because I didn't understand the purpose of D&D. I was afraid of not being able to do enough damage in combat, of being bad by not rolling enough successful rolls, of not going first in the initiative, of being a worse character than everybody else. And those aren't good reasons. Those aren't justifications for what I did. However, there was a point in 2019 where I finally did come to the realization that failing is really fun. It's just part of the game. Failure creates risk. Failure leads to the opportunity of something a lot more interesting happening. Failure means that when you do succeed, it's so much more exciting. It's what means that when you make a plan, it's intense, because you don't know whether or not it's going to work. That was the lesson that stopped me from cheating in D&D. Not only that, but it made me very much a stickler for the dice rolls. As a DM, I often try to roll all of my dice out in the open so that the party can see how things are going and know that I'm not controlling how this plays out. And now, when I'm a player, I cheer gleefully when I roll a nat 1, just like I rolled a nat 20, because to me, they are both just as interesting. Now, this next problem is interesting, because unlike the other ones, which are either ones that I have grown out of, or ones that I have always had and I have outside of D&D, this one is one that I've realized has actually developed quite recently. And part of making this video is kind of to, in a way, hold myself accountable to avoid doing it in the future. What I'm referring to is called Backseat DMing. It's the idea that you're a player in a game, but giving your DM advice on how they should run their game. This isn't always inherently bad. There are definitely some benefits. If you have a new DM who doesn't understand how a spell works, or quickly needs to look up fall damage, and you know off the top of your head what fall damage is, you can just tell them and it helps speed up the game instead of having to wait for them to look up the stuff. As a DM, sometimes I do want some help from the party when I don't know something but I know one of them do. However, this can come with some problems. most DMs don't know the player's handbook off the top of their head. So when you tell someone what the rules for fall damage are, you might be telling them the rules for fall damage in your personal game, forgetting that this was a homebrew rule and not a rule that is for the entire game. Backseat DMing can also sometimes be rules lawyering, where your DM decides that they have nat 1s be critical fails on skill checks, and then you tell them, hey, that's not how it works in the book. The book says that that's only for attack rolls. And now they feel like they need to change the ruling that they wanted to do because you told them that's not how it is. I'm going to explain a situation that actually happened really recently. We were at the very end of this campaign. It was the final session. And part of that, we got to use the wish spell. And our idea was to use the spell to jump from level 8 to level 20. We phrased it something along the lines of, we wish to reach the maximum potential of our domain. It was an in-character way of explaining we wish to be brought to level 20. Now, the way the wish spell works is that you can ask for anything that you want. However, if it's not in one of the base things that you can normally ask for, it potentially could just not work at all. It could only partially work, or it could work, but there are some side effects to it. Now, the way that we worded our spell means that he couldn't really break the way that we did. We wrote it in a very hard-coded way that there wasn't like a way to be like, oh, there wasn't a way to monkey's paw it, is what I'm trying to say. And so that left with a couple options. Either have it not work at all and the spell just fails, have it partially work, we get some levels but not all the way to level 20, or we get to level 20 and there's no consequences. And I remember when my DM was trying to decide whether or not he wanted to bring us all the way up to level 20 right at the very end, one of the things I said was, come on, we're at the last session, you gave us the wish spell, it breaks the game, let us break the game. Which, that isn't a bad argument. When you are at the last session, it's totally fine to give your players whatever the hell they want, because it's not going to have long-lasting consequences. It's not going to affect future sessions. This is the final one. However, I wasn't arguing from a player perspective of, oh, this would be really fun. What was really happening was I was arguing from a, oh, come on, this is what a good DM would do. My friends know that I make YouTube videos. I even know that some of them watch them. And so I am aware of the fact that to some degree they think that my opinions on what makes a good DM are higher than theirs. Which, if you think that's the case about any D&D YouTuber, that is simply not true. No one's opinion is inherently better or worse just because they upload videos or get a lot of views. But I've had friends who have said to me, oh, you know what you're talking about, you have a D&D channel, even though I have never played D&D with them, and they have no idea what it's like to play with me. And that's when I realized that I needed to find the line between being helpful and being controlling, because that's the difference between being a good player and a bad one. And so to end off this video, I just want to say, you do not need to worry about being the perfect D&D player. This is because no one is. And that's because the perfect player totally changes depending on what group you're in. Some people really want super high chaos adventurers who are willing to do stupid shit and are going to go off the walls. Some people want really grounded players who can really get into their character and feel the world as if it's real. The most important thing is to establish clear and open communication with the rest of your party about what everyone's expectations are, about what other people want, about if there is something that you're doing that's harming their fun. You want to be able to discuss it as early as possible to prevent any problems happening in the future. And with that, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, click that subscribe button to stay updated on future releases. Thank you again, and this is the end of the video.